hello, and welcome to another edition of the Riverfront Reds Show, where this week we try to learn whether, if all the missions are impossible, how do they keep getting completed? With Joel Luckhaupt, I am Seth Shaner. Joel, another Mission Impossible comes out this weekend. Are you pumped?
I wouldn't say I'm pumped. I'm one behind still. I still have not seen the Dead Reckoning, so I can't watch the final Reckoning until I see the Dead Reckoning.
Yeah.
I'm at that age now where, well, I shouldn't say that because there's plenty of people my age that go to movies, but I don't get out to the movies as much as I'd like to, especially during the summer because of, baseball.
Well, and you do things with your evenings. Notably, go down to Great American Ballpark and help the TV broadcast with statistics. But also, like when we have children, like you and I both do, it's kind of some of their things come first, such as baseball games that they're playing in for me, because I was coming from baseball practice tonight. So, no, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to watch the movie. My son and I were watching the next to last one earlier today, so hopefully we can catch up on that before we go see the rest. But hey, it's good to have you here. Certainly the Red Legs, another up and down week where at one point you think everything's great, and then another point you maybe don't. But there was reference earlier in the week to a team meeting. I never heard the words players only, but I heard the word team meeting a few times. Charlie Goldsmith and a few other reporters. It got to me thinking about team meetings in the past, players only meetings in the past, and certainly I only remember the ones that really worked. I think there was probably one in 1999 that Greg Vaughn called at one point, and that seemed to spur them on. But the one I will always remember, and you and I were talking about before we hit record, was the one in 1995. Barry Larkin, I don't know if he was he wasn't officially captain yet, probably. They hadn't put the C on.
I don't remember what the year was when he was made captain, but yeah, go ahead.
But Barry, and I confirmed it. You confirmed it with a print article. I confirmed it with a YouTube video of the broadcast from the Mets broadcasters that Barry called a meeting. They had gotten off to a 1-8 start. It was a late start because of the strike. They only played 144 games that year. And following a 3-0 loss on Friday, May 5th, the Reds had a players-only meeting. And they'd started the season 1-8. I mean, a team that was supposed to do some things. They ended 1994 in first place. I know they had some good players on that team. Deion Sanders was still on the team. Benitez Santiago, I think, was an addition in 95, so he was new to the team. They were expected to do more than start 1-8. Do you remember that team very well from as you look back?
I have to admit that I don't have a ton of memories of that team. I was home that summer, but I was a freshman, sophomore in college at that point in time. And you know how bubbles are at a university where, I didn't have a lot of news. I remember watching the playoffs, but I was not able to follow the team closely. I don't think that summer.
That brings up a sore spot for me. Where'd you go to college?
DePaul and Greencastle, Indiana.
Okay. I was from Southeast Ohio. I was in high school at the time, but because of the strike, Major League Baseball had to do a make good because they didn't have the playoffs in 94. So they called it the Baseball Network, right? And it was like, I think NBC and ABC were both doing games, and they would alternate nights or where they were and all that. And we had Central Ohio. We had Columbus's television station. And there were nights when the Reds and Indians played at the same time. And I could not watch the Reds and the Indians were the big story that year. Obviously, they went 144 and they opened Jacobs Field the year before. And I just remember just thinking how unbelievable it is. I live in Ohio. My team is in the playoffs, and I can't watch them. So that was a sore spot for me. But backtracking to May 6th, my stepfather's company had tickets, and they were in the yellow seats down the left field line. I was
Those are the fancy seats.
Very close to the foul net, kind of that thing that hung down. It wasn't really a pole, and because they wanted to remove it when they had football games. And I remember they were padded seats. They were nice seats. I actually referenced that in an article I wrote about this game. So my stepdad wasn't a very big baseball guy. He loved football. And he said, well, we'll take you and your sister and then my mom. We all went down from Columbus to the game. In this game, after the players only meeting, after the meeting, they fall down 11-4. And when they give up that 11th run in the top of the 8th, he says, "We're out of here." And my mom and sister went to the restroom. We went down to the car. Of course, in Riverfront, we could go down escalators and get down to the underground parking there. And when you get in a car, then it's AM radio, right? And you're in a garage, so it's just a zzz sound. You can't really hear anything. I remember coming to a ramp just as the radio started coming in, and I hear fireworks. Now, what had happened was Ron Gant hit a 3-run home run. And so it was 11-4. He cuts that in. They score 6 runs in the 8th. We're up by Kings Island when Jerome Walton hits a home run in the 9th, a 2-run home run to win the game by 2. They win 13-11. You were talking about memory pockets and things like that. I will never forget that game.
Right.
And it was a sore spot for a long time. I went back to school on Monday, and there's a guy at school. I went to school over south of Zanesville, so not as many Reds fans over there. Maybe they had Cleveland and Pittsburgh also. And a guy was a big Reds fan. He's like, "You were at the game, right?" And I said, "Yeah, but we left early." And he could not believe it. But that started a 6-game streak. They won 6 games in a row, and they had a 19-3 stretch jumping off from there. And I remember people comparing it to like when George Foster got put in the lineup in 75. They went 41-9. It wasn't quite that, but they went from 1-8 to ending up winning 85 games and only a 144 game schedule. And they made the playoffs. They went to the NLCS and got beat by the Braves. But that was a good team, and certainly that players only meeting worked. So I don't know. Have you ever, when you've been in the booth, when you've talked to Barry or other players, have you ever had them talk about players only meetings? I know you had a quote that you read just a minute ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, so in this article, it talked about, Barry actually says the only thing a meeting does is bring up the crap that's going on. If everything's going well, you don't need a team meeting. And I think that's, you obviously you never have a players only meeting or a team meeting. If things are going right, you want to keep that feeling. You don't want to start, drudging up things. Sure. But sometimes I think in those kind of environments, people just need to get things off their chest, and they need to have that. I mean, it's true. Like if you work in an office, you need to have that. If things are going frustrating and you're not accomplishing what you need to accomplish, you need to be able to have that channel of communication to clear up the things that are kind of blocking you. And, that's certainly true within it feels different because of an athletic sport. And, people are, I don't know, like, a lot of baseball is reactionary, and outside of the pitcher, you don't really have the control of the action. You're just reacting to what's going on. And so it feels weird that well, what's a meeting going to do to fix that? But sometimes I think, the good takeaway that the team had from the meeting this past week was that it allowed them to kind of all acknowledge to each other that we just need to relax.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever extra pressure you're putting on yourself, it's good for you to be able to just take a step back and kind of let the game come to you sometimes. I don't know what happened when they got to Pittsburgh. They forgot all of that, but they certainly played very well for the first few days after that meeting in the past week.
And I'll tell you, the biggest thing is leadership gets reflected after that type of meeting, because if you air everything out and then you were already playing poorly and then people air out each other, somebody's got to be there to help pick up the pieces and put it back together. And, as an Ohio State football fan, there's famously was a meeting after the Michigan game last year. Now they called it a players only meeting, but they had the head coach there. Yeah. There was no other coaches there and no other support staff. And they actually, from what I understand, the Ohio State players got after Ryan Day a little bit.
Yeah.
And he allowed them to do that. And then at the end of that meeting, some of the team leaders brought everybody together, and it was a very spiritual team as well. So that kind of helped bring everybody together. They got together and got in a circle, and it really helped calm things down. So it's kind of like you've got to blow it up and then put it right back together and hope it fits, right?
Right. Sometimes people just need their voice to be heard. Mm-hmm. And they don't even necessarily need something to be done about it. I mean, you hope that whatever negativity is going on, gets resolved. but sometimes people just want to know that, like, if I say something, people are listening, and like, I'm not just over here talking to my buddy in the corner complaining about whatever's going on. I've heard of plenty of Reds teams that have come through here where, guys butted heads and it just kind of festered. It never really, like, nothing ever was ever done about it. And, I'm not going to say that's the reason why they weren't any good, but it certainly doesn't make it, enjoyable to come to the ballpark if you've got to play with people that you don't like being around.
That's right. And there's also been a few teams these last couple of years that famously, they all seem to try, I guess, and they got along really well. The camaraderie was good, and they just weren't winning enough ball games. So
need the talent still too.
Yeah, you do. Well, you mentioned they come off sweeping the Guardians in the Ohio Cup. You were there. I guess, what was the ballpark like? Was, if they still printed tickets, you think everybody would have been saving theirs? I mean, that was.
I don't know. It's the weird thing with this team is that they show you moments where it's like, wow, they've got something. They're starting to put it together. They can really play well, and then they'll turn right around the very next day, and like baseball is, they're like a monkey with a football kind of thing. I mean, it is just, they don't. It baffles me. And, you can say that it's a talent issue. I think they've got talent. I don't think they've got 100 win talent on this team. I think they've got, 90 win potential. I mean, things have to go a lot of right for them to be a 90 win team, but they do have some talent in there, and they've got to find a way to unleash that talent and consistently unleash it, not just in short spurts. It's disappointing. It's also exciting when they're playing well. It's up, it's down. It's, actually, I just looked up something for Jason Stark the other day. And this kind of blew me away because I didn't think to look it up when it happened. But when they scored 10 runs in the first inning against the Astros, they actually got shut out the day before and the day after that game. And they are the third team ever since 1901, at least, to get shut out, score 10 runs in an inning the next game, and then get shut out the game after that. And that just shows you kind of like how different they are as a team in terms of like this jaggedness that they have right now.
Yeah, their run differential is going to be, you can't rely on it really. I mean, I haven't looked up run differential in a few weeks, I should say, but at some point they were actually plus quite a bit, but yet it was like, that's kind of fake because they won a few, 10-1 games or whatever like that, and it's just.
So one thing I wonder, and I don't have any, inside information or anything like that. This is more just me like musing about things. Is I wonder if there is something to the idea that new management comes in, and you've had, especially when a lot of these players had only ever played for David Bell in the big leagues, and new management comes in and wants to do things differently. If there's like some imbalance in how they're trying to figure out who they are as a player. And so that's why you see this. Some nights it makes sense to them, and some nights they're still in between on what they're going to be. And that's not saying that all of a sudden everybody's going to figure it out and break out. But I do wonder if the change in management, if maybe we're not fair to the idea that like we expected them to be, running or hitting the ground running and be a whole new team and be a completely different team just because a new manager came in, which I'm not real sure most people thought that. But if it is one of those things where it takes time to get people all kind of on the same page and pulling in the same direction.
Well, and you add into that the fact that of my Cleveland fan friends, of which I have several living here in Columbus, like there were years, even 4, 5, 6 years into his tenure, he was there 11 years up in Cleveland, Tito was, and there were years where it's just like, man, it wasn't until mid-June that they started playing well.
Yeah.
And that's been part of his MO. I mean, the World Series year was kind of like that. The following year, they had that huge like 22-game win streak late in the year that really put them over the top. And he just seems like he takes a while to figure out what his pieces are and where they go.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I mean, it's weird. It's weird because baseball's not basketball or football where a new coach comes in and you're learning a whole new scheme. But it is up to kind of like you said, it's up to the manager to figure out how to best use his players, which situations they're going to succeed in, which situations they're going to fail in, and sometimes you've got to watch them fail before I can't use him in this situation. It's not the right situation for him.
And to a man, everybody seemed excited to be held accountable. That was like a buzzword, right? Buzzwords. And but I heard recently, I think Jim Day maybe was talking about the fact that like even Ellie, that in the dog days of spring training, and maybe he didn't face down Ellie eye to eye, but it was in a group, and Tito had to come out and say, hey, you've got X amount of time today to get better, and we need to go do it. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you're used to doing something one way and now you're doing it different, even though you in your mind you want to do it better or different, then it's still, there's habits take time to form, I guess.
Right. And I think sorry, I didn't have to cut you off, but I was going to, I mean, the other thing to remember there too is that there's a new hitting coach. Mm-hmm. So they're getting different messaging about how to adjust at the plate and stuff like that. So, that could be a factor. I'm not saying it's the sole factor. There's a lot about this team that looks a lot like they have the last couple of years. Yeah. And that could just be who they are. It's just that it's probably also not fair to bury the manager or bury the new coaches just yet.
Yeah, I buy that. Yeah. Well, hey, so Monday was a continuation of the streak. They had they sandwiched around the 3-game sweep of Cleveland, where they had 5 games in a row that they won. And look, if they could do that a few times, they're gonna, it's gonna look better. But after Monday night, I mean, the vibes were great, man. It was TJ Friedel with 3 hits. Austin Hayes had 3. Ellie went 2 for 4 with a pair of doubles and RBI, a couple RBIs. Gavin Lux had a pair of hits. If we did the show that night, Joel, I think we'd be buying our playoff tickets, or I would.
Well, I certainly would never get too excited about beating the Pirates. I mean, that's no offense to the Pirates, but they're bad. I mean, it's like
they lost 2 in a row.
Yeah. I mean, and then what's that say about the Reds? I mean, what blows me away about this whole stretch is that they lose 2 to the White Sox, sweep the Guardians, and then lose 2 to the Pirates. And like that, they got beat by the Marlins this year. I mean, it is just, it's disjointed. Like, I don't know if they're letting their guard down in these games or what's going on.
Well, and the only team they should have bulldozed that they did was Colorado. They played well out there. I want to ask you about this, though. Tuesday and Wednesday, they lose both games to the Pirates, as I mentioned, but both games were started by left-handed pitchers. Now, they got to Bailey Falter earlier in the year, but how much blame can we place on the Reds' offense inability to hit against lefty starters? Is that a thing?
I mean, it's felt like a thing for a few years.
Yes.
It's interesting because like Austin Hayes was supposed to be one of the people that fixed that. Santiago Espinal crushes lefties. So, these are moments when these guys should shine, and they're not. I mean, Matt McClain hit lefties like crazy in 23. Now, Matt McClain's a whole other beast, and we can maybe talk about it later, but these guys, I mean, Tyler Stevenson has always hit lefties pretty well. You would think that there would be some way that they could break through, and it feels like this is one of those things where it's like, it just feels like the same thing that we've seen the past few years.
Well, the crazy thing is that first game, the only real threat in the game, or the biggest threat in the game, was a left-handed batter, TJ Friedel, leading off the game with a triple. And he was left out there. And, I mean, it's just hard to fathom sometimes. You just listed several guys. Now, Spencer Steer seems to be coming alive. So that was good to see those couple games. Nick Martinez, though, continues to shine. Yeah. 6 innings, only 1 earned run. And Luis May and Lyon Richardson pitched scoreless innings. The game was not the pitcher's fault, that's for sure.
No, and in fact, it hasn't really been most of the season. There have been some bad game. I mean, every starter is going to have bad games here and there. You know, it stinks to waste good pitching. For all the years that we've been watching the Reds, and like, man, if they just had pitching, and it feels like the last couple of years, it's like, well, they've got the pitching and they can't score consistently, and you know, so it really stinks to waste that when you have got good pitching.
Well, that brings up two questions. Actually, the previous discussion brought up one question I want to ask you. So, a lot of folks on social media, some people I think are pretty smart people that I subscribe to as far as following, question not playing Will Benson in either of those games. He's coming off the tear of a series against Cleveland, but again, a left-handed batter. He's low 200s career against lefties. When a guy's that hot, do you kind of think you should put him back in the lineup, even if it's against a lefty?
I mean, I never thought of putting him in the lineup. I did question why Connor Joe batted in the 8th inning and why Santiago Espinal batted in the 9th. Neither of those guys have hit right-handed pitching well enough in their lives to justify batting them in a 1-run game when you've got Gavin Lux and Will Benson on the bench, both of whom have been hitting pretty well of late. I don't, you know, I don't think it does Will any good to necessarily stick him in a lineup when he's not, you know, a week ago he was still trying to earn his way into the big leagues again. So I don't think you necessarily have to put him in the lineup every day just because he was hot.
Okay.
You know, if the matchup doesn't suit him, the matchup doesn't suit him. And yeah, maybe he knocks a hit in that, you know, but that's an if thing. And like the whole point of having your platoon is to use the platoon when it makes sense. Right.
Well, then in that case in the 9th, I think when Espinal did bat for himself against a righty, I don't know. I think Francona had an answer about mixing and matching infielders and outfielders, and it was tough. I mean, it's a tough answer when I think you're right. If you're going to lean that heavily against batting a lefty against a lefty, then in the biggest spot of the game, right, or your last chance, I should say, maybe bring that lefty in against the righty. That's
right.
That I was wondering about there.
It was, and for me, it was the 1-run game issue. You know, if it's a 2-3-run game, maybe I think a little differently about it because you don't want to, you don't necessarily want to, you're going to need to string together a few hits. So changing this one guy, but you already have a guy on base. You have a guy that could steal second. So if you give him a chance to steal second. And then if you've got Lux up there, or you've got Benson up there, all it takes is a base hit and you've got a tie ball game now. Then you figure out the defense after that. I mean, I get it. Espinal is, probably their best defender at third base. If you tie the game or if you take the lead, you may not even matter. There may never be a ball hit to third base, but you can't find out whether or not that's true unless you tie the game or take the lead.
I think in that game, Lux was still on the bench as well, right?
Right. Both lefties were still on the bench. Now he did use them the next day.
Yeah.
Both of them batted the next day. And maybe Lux wasn't available, but Benson certainly had to have been available for that first game.
Maybe I wondered maybe he just got a whole day off. Like, that was bizarre to me. I mean, you're tearing the cover off the ball, and yeah. So the other thing that occurred to me when you were talking about you get good pitching, you're not getting good hitting, and vice versa sometimes over the years. This team lucked into, listen, Scott Schebler and Adam Duvall were not highly coveted prospects when they got them in trades. They lucked into getting these two guys that hit 30 home runs apiece on some really bad teams.
Right.
The last 2 or 3 years, other than Ellie kind of notching up in number of home runs every year, these 3 years, 2 years and going into this year, other than that, the home runs just aren't coming for this team playing in the tiny ballpark. It's a bizarre thing to me. It doesn't make sense. Even like I said, you didn't have to sign like Santander or somebody to meet. It's just the idea that Adam Duvall and Scott Schebler Those guys came out of nowhere to hit 30 bombs, and here they can't even find a guy that can hit 15 to 20.
I know. It's baffling. It's baffling as how playing in this park. I think it's been since 21 that they've had a guy hit more than 25 home runs.
Yeah, Cassiano.
Yeah, and so like it's just like how do you go 3 years in this ballpark without having somebody hit more than 25 home runs?
Votto too, right? I think they hit 30. He might have hit 36 and 21. Is that right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, I remember they used to get these middle infielders and say, well, you could tick on 7 or 8 more home runs just because of Great American, Alex Gonzalez and Richard. What? It's just,
and Gavin Lux has 1 home run. Like how?
I know. And I mean, he's hit the ball okay, but
yeah,
like the power just hasn't come. I mean, you'd have to like do an amalgamation of like Puig and Aquino together, like the 17 home runs in August for Aquino and however many that Puig hit.
Well, they did not. There was not a single home run in that Pirates series for either team. I looked that up today. There's only been 6 series for all of baseball since 2022 where there wasn't a single home run, and the Reds have had 3 of those.
And did I see also? I think there was this crazy string of consecutive games by the Pirates with 3 or fewer runs.
4 or fewer. Yeah, I don't remember what the number is, but it's. I think they tied the record for 4 or fewer runs in a game. Yeah.
Yeah, and they won 2 of the games where they scored 3 and 1 run respectively. In that last game, it just felt like Groundhog Day watching it. I know the Reds did scratch across a run, lost 3-1, but they only mustered 4 hits. I mean,
didn't have very many threats.
Yeah, Brady Singer when the Reds give him 7 runs a game, he can afford to go 5 innings and give up 2 earned runs, but it just didn't look as promising in that game when he's only going 5.
Yeah, Brady Singer reminds me of the quote from Wade Miley when he said that I've never lost a game where my offense has scored 10 runs for me.
I should hope not. Although do you remember the 2 years in a row? Let me think here. I know 2008 was one of them because I almost went up to one of the games. Bronson Arroyo in back-to-back years pitched in
Toronto.
And he gave up 9 or 10 runs in both those games.
Yeah.
If you look at his run average without that and with it, it's amazing. It's like a full run.
Yeah, that's crazy.
A 3.5 ERA, and then because of that, he was like a 4.35 or something.
Yeah. One outing can really blow you up. You're digging out of a hole all year.
Even though he's throwing 200 innings a year, it's still one really bad one. Now, today it was confirmed. I had seen Red Leg Nation reported yesterday that Lyon Richardson was going to be optioned back to AAA Louisville. Hunter Green's announced to be the starter Friday night against the Cubs, so I'm assuming that's the move. Is that what you're hearing too?
I haven't heard it. I mean, I don't have any inside information. I haven't been down to the ballpark since they left, so I wouldn't catch any of that stuff.
Announced by the Reds that Richardson is down and Hunter is listed as the probable.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything I've heard says Hunter is starting on Friday. So,
before we get to that, what do you think about the way Richardson pitched? I thought he's done pretty well.
I was impressed. I didn't think much of him last year when I saw him, or the year before, whenever that was. His changeup is very impressive. Really good looking pitch. I wonder if part of the reason that he's out on is numbers wise is because I don't know how many of the guys in the bullpen have options. I mean, obviously Luis May does, but Luis May never go back down again unless he loses control. And so I also wonder if maybe they'll send Richardson down there and try to keep him a little more stretched out for 2 or 3 innings at a time.
And that's going to be, the Dodgers do that so well. The Reds have done it. I mean, you're going to need 2 or 3 extra arms that are going to kind of shuttle back and forth.
Yeah.
It's part of the strategy at this point. I mean, you've got to have those guys with options to do it.
Yeah.
And talking about Luis May, he got out of some real trouble the other day, including one that came off the rocks, the backstop basically.
Yeah.
Came all the way back up and play and didn't allow a run to score.
Yeah, he has his last couple outings has kind of shown some of those concerns they had, which he amazingly avoided the first few outings that he had. There's been a little more wildness there, I don't know if maybe he's relaxing a little bit and is just a little too loose. Maybe
I don't know, but he's so electric that
he
it's
is
definitely good to bring him.
very intimidating on the mound. Like having not seen him pitch before he came up, like he reminds me of Felix Bautista. That's the pitcher, like just the look that you have on the mound. Now Bautista, will low bridge a few guys here and there, but and we haven't really seen that from May yet. But he just has that intimidating, like he looks like I describe he's like the very definition of barrel chested. He's just big and bulky there. I'm sitting here trying to flex. Like, yeah, I'm really demonstrating there.
You need like 4 more hoodies.
I know.
That's all right. Well, what do you think about the importance of the Cubs series? They get them for 3. They go out to Kansas City, then they go to Wrigley. So it's 6 games of the next 9 are against the Cubs. Cubs are 30-20, Joel, and they're up 3 games on the streaky Cardinals, but they're 5.5 above the Reds right now. It's too early to call it do or die, but it seems pretty important.
Yeah, I'm glad that Hunter's coming back. Mm-hmm. I don't expect him to be perfectly crisp, but I hope he's, a good version of Hunter and not shaky because he's had some time off. I think it's an important, just from the simple fact that, I don't know when they play him again, but I'm guessing it's not until August or September. And so you don't want to, lose 5 of 6 or whatever. And then even if you hit a hot streak later in the year, you've already kind of dug that hole. You don't want the hole to be too deep before you get a chance to play him again. And this whole next stretch of their schedule anyway is rough. What is it? The Brewers are the only team under 500 that they're scheduled to play in that span, I think.
Yeah. Kansas City, as I mentioned, Milwaukee at home, Arizona at home, Cleveland on the road for the 3, and then at Detroit, which Detroit's very good right now.
Yeah, the Yankees were in there. The Red Sox were in there. I mean,
they get Minnesota and St. Louis as well.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a rough stretch.
Yeah, and it's just I want to ask you about that too with Hunter Green. He basically missed 2 starts, I guess, if you kind of with an off day here or there. You wouldn't want to go much longer, right, without pitching, without having to have a rehab assignment. But I think it's probably understandable. And it was kind of like they described it as not as bad as it could have been. So maybe he was back throwing a little quicker than we thought or knew. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard anything. The first time I had seen him throw was when he threw down at the ballpark. We had, they had video of it on the game. So I don't know if he was throwing underneath or out in the bullpen or what. I hadn't heard reports on it. So who knows how much throwing he's done. Hopefully he was able to stay crisp.
Yeah, I mean, you already made the point. I mean, you can't expect perfection.
No.
But I mean, it's a little. I don't know. Sometimes pitchers talk about tired arm or dead arm earlier in the season, and that's not really what his problem was. It was a groin, right? But you could see a little bit of a zip on the fastball, right? I mean,
I mean, it wouldn't be, especially there's got to be some adrenaline. It's a big series. It's the start of the big series. It's probably going to be pretty crowded because there's going to be a lot of Cubs fans there if it's not filled with Reds fans. And so there's going to be some energy in the ballpark at least. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and throwing a little harder than maybe he normally does. He's also, he's kind of got that eye of the tiger lately too, where he's just, he wants to show the league that he's fully formed, fully developed, and has, is one of the top pitchers in baseball.
He's only got one even close to shaky outing. Other than that, I saw MLB.com or somebody did their power rankings of pitchers, and he's not on it. I assume with being on the IL, that's the reason, out of sight, out of mind. But he was at the top of that list there for a while, and certainly he's earned that spot because, you go back to last July, and he's just been on fire.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, hey, Joel, how about some viewer mail?
All righty.
As Chad Dotson used to say, actual letters from actual viewers. And it was always funny back then because we weren't on video. But I don't know. Anyway, this comes from our patrons on Patreon. You too can get into our Patreon membership, and really the big thing on that is we have a Slack channel, and it's basically like if you're tired of social media and tired of people yelling at each other all the time, our Slack channel is the place to be, because we have different sections for different things, but largely it's a Reds place. It's a spot for Reds fans to talk about the Reds. So go ahead and sign up for that. But the first one comes from Dave Magram. He says, how can we assume, and he's going to bring up some negative things here, Joel.
Uh-oh.
He says, can we assume Candy does not come back on the field in a Reds uniform? And for that matter, Diaz too. I know their trade value is in the toilet, but how about some prospects? Let's take them one at a time. Candy is kind of out of sight, out of mind. I mean, they've had their successes without him, and they've struggled just the same as they were with him. So at other times, I don't know. I'm always shocked to see his total numbers from last year, because he actually ended up with around 19 or 20 home runs. It really surprises me, because my memory of him was exactly what's going on now, is he just wasn't there.
Yeah, I think I saw something or heard something that he had one of the slowest swing speeds in baseball before he went down. I think if he's traded as part of a package where it's just like, we need you to take some money off of our hands, because nobody is gonna pursue him at this point. I don't see why anybody would. He's probably damaged goods in some form, and outside of like packaging him up with somebody that's more valuable, which would in turn lower the type of prospect you would get, but it would free up some money.
Well, and as funny as a lot of us thought the timing was of his IL stint, the day after Tito kind of confirmed in person to him that he was basically being benched, this guy was kind of a doubles machine. I mean, he was a poor man's Castellanos at his other stops, right? But he still hit a lot of doubles, a lot of gap-to-gap power. And for him to have such a slow swing speed, his back probably was bothering him, and he was just fighting to stay in the lineup. I mean, I'd love to see him come back and do something. I've told you before when you've been on, he scares me at either first or third.
Right.
It's why when Spencer Steer had to be the DH, it was kind of a hard watch for me, because Andy was in the field on a position. I just can't. It's tough. As for Diaz, it's a combination, right? I mean, it's his confidence / location is not as good, but it's also, we already mentioned earlier, it's a new manager, and it's a manager who's going to make you show him that you can do it. I mean, if David Bell was still the manager, I kind of wonder if Diaz would still be the closer and still be to get things done even without the location. I think he's being held accountable, maybe for the first time as a pro or as a big leaguer. And I don't know. We'll see. If he can find it down there, maybe he can still help this team. We'll see.
Yeah, he's got so many moving parts that I don't think there's any guarantee that he'll ever find it again. That's the scary thing. I mean, it's been a couple years really since he's had it. I mean, it was really just that good first year and a half of him in the big leagues, and then since then, it's been very shaky the whole time.
Yeah, it really has. Rex Scott, and the funny thing is, I had already kind of quoted him on something he said in our Slack channel. So I'm going to combine two, I think. We'll see how this goes. He said, like all of us, I've been hoping for a long time to see some deals made that strengthen the team. Unlike in the past, there is evidence that this team, as is, can perform at a high level when all its parts are working together. That fact alone should be an impetus to the ownership and front office to do what it takes to make us even stronger. The funny thing to me was earlier this week, I overheard on another show someone talking about, it was a listener that wrote in. They want to know what we could get for Espinal. And I'm like, I have wanted since that 2010 to 2013 era when they just never signed good players to be on the bench.
Right.
I wanted a guy like Espinal on this team to show they have depth for years.
Right.
And the first thing he shows, we're trying to trade him.
I know. Well, and some of that is, people have been, I don't want to say abused, but they've been through the ringer a lot with this franchise. And there's a lot of, well, these guys aren't going to be here for long, so we need to get something for them while we can. When Hunter Green started pitching well, I had somebody say to me, this was last year, oh, well, we should trade him now. And I'm like, no, like at some point you have to like have good players on your team. You can't just tell yourself, well, he's playing well enough to be traded now. If the ownership does that, that's one thing, but fans should never do that. In my opinion, fans aren't the general manager. Fans want good players on their team. General manager or owners, they theoretically want good players on their team, but like, you shouldn't care about what a guy is going to cost as a player or as a fan. Enjoy the guys while they're there. And if they're playing well, enjoy that even more.
Right. No, and the whole idea behind all this is to get, and I know they did do a deal with Hunter, but it was kind of at a lower rate because he was still so young when they signed it. But all these controllable arms, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And maybe I guess if you get to the point where they were when they did get rid of Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray and those guys, I still question those moves as a fan, which I think that's what you're saying. It's kind of like I wanted to keep those guys.
Right.
But maybe you get to a certain point where it's either go all in with trading for prospects or let them walk, and certainly I guess you make your decisions based on that. But right now you're right. I feel like it's keep the good players and try to get even better players.
Right.
But so Rex's other question, and this is a little similar. I'm actually just going to take from it. He's asking about, like, last year, Chad Dotson was talking about how for him at that time, his only keepers were De La Cruz and Green. And he's like, if somebody's going to make your team better by wanting any of these other guys, even especially the prospects, go do it. I guess what I'd ask you is, like, think about, like, even that 1995 team, and economics of baseball are a little different now. But remember, like, in 95, they traded, like, Deion Sanders. And it was a deal that brought back, like, pitching depth with Dave Burba and Mark Portugal, and what was it? Dave Martinez came over in that deal as well. Maybe Darren Lewis. I forget if that was that same deal. But I guess the question would be, like, can you trade something if you have a little bit extra of maybe to get something you need? Power hitting outfielder.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think you have to think from the perspective of are we making our team better?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't. You're going to probably have to rob Peter to pay Paul at some point if you're going to improve this team. Whether that might, robbing Peter may mean trading top prospects even. But it's just, the goal should be, how do I make the team better? How do we get better? And really the goal should be, how do I get better for this team right now? And not, how do I project to be better 3 years from now? The stage that they're at in their process right now should be, how do we compete? How do we win a division? How do we, they're not, we've gone through the rebuild. They had their opportunity to build. Now is the time to succeed. Mm-hmm. And so if that requires you to trade, I don't know, Mike McClain or Spencer Steer or Tyler Stevenson or something like that, to get what you need to improve your team, then you have to at least consider it. And hopefully pull the trigger if it really does improve your team.
Well, and to be honest, you could go both ways on that. The famous story was it like Johnny Cueto and Joey Votto could have gotten traded for Joe Blanton? Right. But at the same time, the rumors that somebody didn't want to trade Billy Hamilton.
Right.
Or, whatever.
Or Pokey Reese. They didn't want to add Pokey Reese to a deal. And so, ultimately you have to be able to evaluate your own talent. Mm-hmm. That's something that Bob Howsam was really good at. He was really good at evaluating his own talent and then the talent that he was acquiring. And if you can do that well, which is not an easy thing to do, especially because you're trying to predict a future for all of those players. But you really have to be able to do that. That's the key to success, is being able to say, this player is going to be good. This player may not. We don't like the ceiling on this guy, and they seem to. This team that we're discussing with seems to hold him in higher regard than we do. Let's use that to our advantage.
But it's also not a crime if a guy goes on to do well somewhere else if you did well in return, right? I mean,
exactly.
You don't have to police every trade. Like it doesn't have to be like we destroyed them in that trade. So
right.
I want your take on this one. Skylar Webker, the host of Late Night Reds. You can catch it on Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. He and Ben Brown are doing a great job over there. He says, how does this team break the 500 ceiling it seems to have around it? It seems like as soon as one aspect of the team improves, they start slumping in another. It's kind of a real thing, isn't it? They get a few games over, a few games under here, but they've been right there.
Well, we already talked about their schedule coming up. It may, right now, if I'm being realistic, if they're 5 games under 500 at the start of July, I will consider it a success because they've got their hardest part of their schedule coming up, and it's a gauntlet. It really is a tough stretch of a schedule. And so, if they can just kind of maintain somewhere close to 500, I think it'll be a success.
I think you're right. Now, the problem is at that point, you're talking early July to mid-July to late July. How far can they slip where you become sellers instead of buyers or you sit on your hands instead of doing anything? You'd like to be buyers at a certain level. And I think you're right. I mean, and really that means they threw away a lot out of these Florida, White Sox, and Pittsburgh.
Right.
I mean, you can't win 1 out of 3 in all 3 of those series.
Right. And the real question will be, I mean, I think we'll be able to tell, are they playing better in July, but by come July, regardless of what their record is. And as long as they're not, 10 games out of the wild card, which I wouldn't think they would be if they're only 5 games under 500, then I think you're still competitive. Now whether or not competitive means they'll be able to make a trade and improve the team is that's a different question.
Well, hey, Andrew Williams says Baseball Savant just released a new bat tracking data focusing on attack angle and tilt vertical bat angle. Quite some time ago, independent data sources discovered that perhaps the king of VBA was none other than Joey Votto, helping him in adapting to pitches in each part of the zone and avoiding pop-ups like no other. I mean, we don't need to even crunch the numbers to know that, right? In his prime, he didn't pop the ball up. In fact, it didn't just separate the elite from the others, but it separated Votto from everyone else. Just another example of Joey being remarkably ahead of the curve. He says, I don't even know what my question is other than maybe our overall thoughts on how perhaps the most cerebral hitter of a generation quietly but massively impacted the game. I guess I'll let you talk about that.
I mean, it was fun to watch.
Yes,
I know some people still only have this image of him as being a walker in their mind, but he was so much more than that. And boy, I sure hope the Reds celebrate him someday.
Where is it?
Well, I mean, it takes 2 to tango, and the last I heard, Joey was in Asia somewhere.
When they didn't come out with a Joey Votto day on the schedule, I was figuring, well, he said he wants to travel for like a year or so and kind of get
right,
whatever. But my goodness, you've got to do something for him and about him. I guess, do you have any like moments over the years that like your jaw just dropped watching him?
Well, I mean, the walk-off grand slam after already hitting 2 home runs in the game on Mother's Day, that one sticks out partly because the whole time during that rain delay, I'm texting with my wife. I mean, we had 2 small kids at that point, and I'm texting with her like, it doesn't look like I'm going to be home for dinner on Mother's Day. So at least he gave me something memorable to do that day. So
I was my cousin graduated from Clemson University the day before that.
Mm-hmm.
We're driving back in the rain. It was raining from Charlotte all the way up through into Ohio. and listening to that game was really nice.
Yeah.
that was definitely a big one. I don't have any more questions, Joel. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. You've gotten a lot more home games recently. You got the series
Mhm.
coming up as well. I guess one question I would ask you is, what is it like to kind of be in there, like be in on the action of the call of the game, and they poke a little fun at you now and again, which is I love it when they say your name because I'm like, hey, I've talked to him before. But can you describe for me a little bit the experience of being able to be in the booth with the guys?
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Uh, there are times when I get a little burnout on the Reds
Mhm.
because of the way they're playing. But going back to the ballpark and being in the booth almost always peps me up. Even if things are miserable, like it gives me the excitement of being around the ballpark and getting to talk to John and Barry and Cowboy and all of those guys. It's always been an entertaining thing for me. I'm so lucky to be able to have this opportunity to do this job, which is essentially comes down to watching baseball and looking things up, which is what I would be doing if I was sitting on my couch.
That's what makes it unfair for the rest of us who would be we do the same thing.
Right.
Remember in 1999, I met Marty Brenneman down at the NCAA tournament. He called the regional down at Knoxville, where Ohio State was, and I was a student at Ohio State. And I met him, and he told me I could come up and see him in the booth at Riverfront. And so,
Mm-hmm.
all right, I'm going to do that. So I did. I got up there one day and got there way before the game and went up and visited with them. And they weren't very good early in the 99 season.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off those couple of years, 96, 97, 98, where they just were not good at all. And I remember asking him, I said,
Relative. It's all relative. I mean, because you didn't know what was coming after that, but
that's true.
yes.
True. At the time, I thought they weren't good because I was still comparing them to the Braves.
Right.
But I remember asking him, I was like, how do you do it for 162 games? And back then, he called every game. It wasn't
Right.
like it became later where they, I'm getting this series off. And he says, well, that's my job. And
Yeah.
and he kind of admitted that sometimes it can be a little more of a downer, but that was really cool to know a guy like him. Even to me at that time, he'd been doing it for so long, and he did it for so many years after.
Right.
That no, it's still a passion to be able to do what you love, and
Yeah.
that's really cool.
I'm really impressed with any of those guys that travel too. I mean,
Mhm.
John does like all but 2 series a year. I think Tommy Thrall does every game. I don't think he takes any games off. So, like being able to do that, like a 10-game homestand, I'm wiped out.
Yeah,
Like I just want to take a nap for a day, and they have to go get on the road and travel and all that. So it's given me a lot more respect for those guys for the work that they do, and then also like the players. Yeah, we would all love to be major league players, but it can be a real grind too.
no doubt. Well, Joel, thanks so much for joining me again. It's a
Mhm.
pleasure. Anytime I can pick your brain a little bit, and I really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, hey, for Scott Klingenbeck, who attended Elder, graduated from Oak Hills, pitched for Ohio State, winning 28 games and compiling 238 strikeouts. He had a big league career that saw him pitch for the Reds in 1998. He passed away just yesterday in his early
Oh,
50s. So hats off to Scott Klingenbeck, and gone way too soon, obviously, but definitely happy trails to him, and thoughts and prayers to his family. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Again, check us out on YouTube, everywhere you get podcasts, and again, join the Patreon group. It's a blast. We get along really well in the chat, and we get really chop things up without, again, the negativity that you find on social media. All right, for Joel Luckhaupt, I am Seth Shaner saying so long, everybody.